But the thing with these Lotus cars, they're so polarizing, right? You see people love them or hate them. 2018 Lotus Evora 400. This was the top dog Lotus Evora right before the GT came out. As the name suggests, it has 400 horsepower and 302 pound-feet of torque, still powered by the 3.5-liter Toyota 2GR FE V6 with an Edelbrock Supercharger. Compared to the Evora GT, it's down on power by about 15 to 20 horsepower and pound-feet of torque. We still have double wishbone front and rear. We're weighing in right around 3,150 pounds with an aluminum monocoque chassis. It's that bonded extrusion aluminum that Lotus is so well known for. We have 19-inch wheels in the front, 20 in the rear, staggered wheels with a 235 section width front and 285 in the rear with Michelin PS4S rubber. We still have hydraulic steering, and market value here is around $65,000 to $70,000. Now, compared to the Evora GT, the styling here is notably different. It's a little bit more muted. You don't have as aggressive vents and the front fascia. It's still a very beautiful car, but a bit more subdued. This rear quarter panel is very polarizing to many people. Many people hate it, say it looks weird, but my favorite angle is actually the rear. I think the circular taillights, the muscular shoulders, it just looks the business, and I really love how narrow the cockpit is over these wide hips. Single exit exhaust. Gotta love the license plate. Euphoria was the choice of Chris, the owner, and I think he spec'd this really well with the blue on tan, but as you guys know, I own a Lotus Evora that is also blue on tan, very similar color combination. With the Evoras, you do have an interior that it feels its age. Actually, it feels more than its age. This feels older than 2018. You also need to use your immobilizer. You press the center button, and then you can get the car started. The Alpine head unit, believe it or not, is from factory. That is not aftermarket, even though it looks the case. The car only has about 4,000 miles, so everything here is pristine. It is technically a 2+2, so those are rear seats behind you, which are essentially unusable. The seat is touching the rear, but funny story, the first time I ever test drove an Evora GT, I actually drove with the sales rep here, his son, who was like 5 years old, behind him, and my tiny girlfriend of the time who sat behind me. And that's right, I drove with 4 people. The car obviously felt a lot heavier, but anyways, I think the interior here is nice, you know, with the leather, but it does feel a bit dated, and you know, the head unit, the controls here, it is something that may not feel as polished, but at least it feels more special every time you get behind the wheel because there's nothing else quite like it. These seats also feel quite similar to the Evora GT, and I prefer them over what I have in the Lotus Emira. Now you do feel like you're a bit high, right? Because the roofline is right here. You're still sitting pretty low. In fact, the height between the Evora and the Emira is very, very close. The everyday driver guys actually tested where your hip lies, and you're about the same height. The difference though is that with these seats, you feel a little bit more cocooned and you sit in them rather than on top of them like you do in the Emira. Let's put this into sport mode. We're just gonna open up the exhaust valves automatically, although we could toggle that button to, you know, quiet the exhaust. It's gonna change the throttle mapping as well. What a fantastic sounding V6. And when the revs are up, the throttle response is nice and natural. Wow, the steering though, man. I love these older Lotus steering racks with the hydraulic steering. Not quite as communicative as a Lotus Elise, which is unassisted. But man, so much happening at the front end, and this is telling you, oh, I love that. So good. Now the suspension, it feels firmer than my Lotus Emira, but a bit softer than the Lotus Evora GT. A nice middle ground. I actually don't think the Evora GT is too firm for the road though. This is... Oh, what was that? This thing is trying to connect? No thanks. How did that happen? That's a little digital Lotusism for you right there. Let's give you a pull. Red line at 7K. Now both the Evora 400 and the Evora GT in sport mode, oh, didn't let me get into second there. A more finicky transmission, double clutch it into second, no issue. But both the Evora 400 and the GT, they let you get up to 7,000 RPM, but only when you go into sport mode. Whereas the Emira is 6,800. And here's the thing, the torque figure in the Evora GT and the Emira is identical, but the power figure is slightly lower. And I think that's only because it revs 200 RPMs, you know, shorter. I think if the Emira revved out all the way to 7,000 as well, it would make the same power figure. And the reason I say that is that here, the horsepower figure in the Evora 400 is identical to the Emira, but the torque figure is lower, yet the red line here is higher. This car does feel plenty quick though, and because of the slightly stiffer suspension over the Emira, and because it's also weighing in about 50 pounds lighter, it does feel a bit more agile. Stable and communicative. I feel like the Emira, even though it is softer, it's a bit more on its toes, which is not really what you'd expect for a car with softer suspension. But things like alignment can change that. Transmission here a little bit more finicky. I feel like with each successive Lotus generation, they get this cable linkage transmission to behave in a more natural way. See there, tried to do a rev match, didn't really get much blip from the engine though. So at lower RPMs, the throttle response in the Evora 400 and the Evora GT is very inconsistent, which makes rev matching a bit tricky. Now, one of the users on the Lotus forums was saying that the actual throttle mapping at lower RPMs is like, it's like this logarithmic curve where it doesn't go linearly, and that's what's causing the issues. Not sure why they made that design choice. Feel the need to double clutch, heel toe double clutch these downshifts into second, just to ensure I'm getting a smoother shift, because it rejected me earlier back there. But the thing with these Lotus cars, they're so polarizing, right? You see people love them or hate them. And it's oftentimes guys who say, hey, these cars are just built in a shed in England and they don't have the same level of refinement and polish and build quality as the equivalent Porsche. And those are actually valid points. The build quality is not quite there. The interior design, fit and finish, etc. The little quirks you get with a car like this, especially at the price point, right? Brand new, these were right around 100K. And although you can get them for 70K now, the build quality and reliability and things like that may leave something to be desired from the owner, but I would argue that what you don't get in necessarily the fit and finish, you get much more of that engagement, that theater, that driving experience. The level of communication in this car, a 2018 model year, is phenomenal. The steering feedback, the chassis, the way it talks to you as you're driving the car hard. Dude, the burble tune on that X3 M40i is insane. We're reviewing that next. Give you another pull. Even though the red line is showing 7K on the tach, it actually feels like it's more around 6,900 where the fuel cutoff is. But the theater, the engagement, every time you get behind the wheel, this feels like a very special event. And I think for most of us driving enthusiasts, more so than car flex enthusiasts, yes, you know, if you care about the status, the prestige, the flex factor of a car, don't get a Lotus. But if you care about the driving experience, the communication, the way it makes you feel, the drama, the excitement, even this Evora 400, which is not as hardcore as the GT, it's phenomenal. Not quite as stiff as the GT, not quite as responsive, a little bit heavier than the GT as well. Because the GT, I think, has maybe another 50 pounds saved over this. You got more carbon bits, it's a little bit more sharp. But this gets you 90% of the way there at a lower price point. I think you're getting tremendous driving experience at around $70,000. And to get the equivalent used Porsche Cayman or even Boxster, let's say the 981 generation, I don't think you're getting the same level of communication and drama. But again, trade-offs. Those cars are still excellent. They just have a different set of strengths and weaknesses. You're getting better fit and finish, better polish, and an engine that doesn't feel like it's teasing you and cutting the red line a bit short, because every time I'm driving a 2GR FE supercharged Toyota in the Evora or the Emira, the red line just comes a little bit too early. But again, you get so much more communication and theater and experience when you drive. But my friends, let me know what you think of the Evora 400 with a comment down below. Big shout out to the owner, Chris, for letting me review his car. My friends, if you want your car reviewed, visit us on JabalAndCars.com, fill out the form on the homepage, and I'll see you all in that next one.